So I was a huge fan of clinical trials after my first experience. And, in that process of it, I really liked the clinical trial setting. You were watched and monitored very carefully, even more so, I was told, than I didn't have any experience outside of that because it was my first line of treatment. But there's lots of people meeting with me and following me and calling me and making sure that I was doing okay. And you're really closely monitored for anything that's going on. They're very attentive to your needs. So my second line of treatment was also a clinical trial. It was specifically for brain mets as well. And I actually know that I got the very last slot on that trial. That was a pretty, after having done my first trial, where the conversation with a clinical oncologist at that time was, you can miss out on a trial because they can fill. And so I knew what drug we would do if I didn't get on the trial, because I did have to wait to find out if I was admitted. And so that drug wasn't going anywhere. It was always going to be there. And whether this drug worked for me or not, that I was going to use on a clinical trial was a systemic treatment option. I knew, regardless of getting on, that the drug that was the second choice was going to be there. I did get on the trial and got the last slot, which was pretty amazing. And that trial worked for me for close to 8 months. The interesting thing about that clinical trial is that years later, I asked my oncologist how that trial worked out. Was it moving along, and how people were doing on it? And she actually said that it didn't do well. The drug did not show that it meet its endpoints, and so it didn't continue. But it actually worked well for me. I mean, 8 months is 8 months, and that drug was never approved. Women don't have access to that drug, and whether or not somebody else would do well or not do well, it doesn't matter so much. It worked well for me. So it was, again, I look at that as bonus time that's been added to my life, because then after that trial was completed, we went on to the next drug, which was actually Xeloda. So if I hadn't done that drug, I would have started Xeloda 8 months sooner. And so it's definitely something I look at from a standpoint scientifically. It's very interesting that how I performed on it, and that it gave me that extra time. And just learned that clinical trials are so beneficial from a standpoint of how they help me, may help you as a patient, but also what they do from a standpoint of research and understanding that the faster we enroll trials and get people to do them, the faster that drug can come to market. Because until that clinical trial is filled, which can take, 6 months to 2 years or 3 years, that just delays that drug getting approved if it does show that it has good efficacy in the brain, if that's what we're looking at. So it's really important to participate in trials. It's kind of like giving back in a way. I look at it like the drugs like Xeloda at one point was somebody's drug that they were looking at a clinical trial and thinking, do I want to do this? And then it became a standard of care drug. And now Verzenio is a standard of care for brain mets. So it's really interesting how it comes full circle.